I met Alina on the second Thursday of August, at a friend's birthday party I almost didn't go to. I was 2 years out of college, working in IT support for a mid-sized finance company, mostly buried in code and second-hand chairs. The last thing I wanted that week was forced socializing, but I went anyway, more out of guilt than interest. She was standing near the bar, sipping soda from a clear plastic cup, rolling her eyes at a guy trying way too hard. I caught her eye for half a second and she raised her eyebrows as if to say, "Can you believe this guy?" It made me laugh, out loud, and she smiled at that. We talked most of the night. Not about anything deep, just music, places we wanted to travel, the awful dip someone brought to the party that tasted like regret. She told me she was in marketing, had recently started working for a creative agency downtown. She'd studied design and had always wanted to do something that mixed art and strategy. I liked that about her right away, that balance between creativity and direction. We exchanged numbers. The next weekend, we had our first real date. A coffee shop near the park, followed by a spontaneous walk that lasted 2 hours. By the time we looped back to our cars, the sun was already down and neither of us wanted to leave. It wasn't one of those dramatic romances. No whirlwind. No chaos. It was steady from the beginning. Consistent. Easy in the way good things are, where showing up never feels like a chore. Within a year, we moved in together. 2 years after that, we got married in a quiet ceremony at a botanical garden just outside the city. It rained the night before but cleared up by morning. Her dress was simple and elegant, and her dad cried harder than anyone expected. We kept the guest list small, just family and close friends. The whole thing felt like us, calm, thoughtful, intentional. We both wanted to build something stable. Not just financially, but in our day-to-day lives. Alina kept moving up at her agency, taking on bigger accounts, eventually stepping into a team lead role. I transitioned to a systems analyst position with more flexibility and better pay. We didn't live extravagantly, but we built comfort, a 2-story house on a quiet street, a backyard with room for a garden, a kitchen big enough for both of us to cook in without stepping on each other's toes. A few years into our marriage, we had our first child, our daughter, Nora. Then, 2 years later, our son, Max. Parenthood shifted everything, as it does, but we adapted. Alina was a natural mother, organized, warm, intuitive. She handled the chaos of toddlers the same way she managed her team at work, firmly but patiently. I did night feedings and bath time, handled school runs when her schedule ran late. We were a team, no question about it. We shared birthdays, scraped through flu seasons, argued over wall paint and vacation destinations. We made packed lunches, took pictures, filled the fridge with drawings and spelling tests. It wasn't flashy, but it was ours. By the time our daughter Nora turned 5, our lives had settled into something that felt real and earned. Alina's career was moving steadily. She had just been promoted to creative director for one of the agency's most competitive teams. The promotion came with more late nights, more client dinners, but also a clear sense of pride. I could see it in how she walked into a room, how she spoke about her work with this quiet confidence that only comes when someone knows they've carved their place in the world. I was proud of her. I told her that often, and I meant it every time. My own work had settled into a rhythm. I handled systems architecture for a medical data company, mostly remote, with the occasional trip into the office for team briefings. It gave me the flexibility to be present with the kids, which became more important as Nora started school and Max began toddling into every corner of the house. Our days were a mix of morning rushes, after-school chaos, and quiet evenings once the kids were asleep. We'd sit together in the living room, each with a book or our laptops, exchanging little remarks about the day. Sometimes we'd watch a show together, something we could both enjoy, even if we were half distracted by work messages or grocery lists. We hosted barbecues in the summer, game nights with neighbors, and birthday parties full of noise and frosting and paper streamers that stayed taped to the walls for days longer than they should have. Our home was lived in. Not perfect, not pristine, but warm and full. Alina had a talent for turning a space into something beautiful. She changed up throw pillows every season, kept fresh flowers on the dining table, and always had some candle burning that made the house smell like clean linen or citrus and mint. We vacationed when we could, usually short getaways with the kids. Beach rentals with sandy floors and too many bags of goldfish crackers, or cabin trips where the Wi-Fi barely worked and we played board games by flashlight. Alina was always the planner, building itineraries, packing snacks in Ziplocs, making sure everyone had sunscreen and hats and backup outfits. I was more laid back, loading the car, navigating, keeping the kids entertained while she handled the details. We balanced each other well. We had routines, traditions. Friday night pizza. Sunday morning pancakes. Nora insisted on syrup and powdered sugar. Max liked to stir the batter even though most of it ended up on the counter. Alina would laugh, hand me a dish towel, and I'd pretend to be annoyed before joining in. Every few months, we'd carve out a night just for us. Hire a babysitter, get dressed up, go to that Italian place we both liked, the one with dim lighting and wine we couldn't pronounce. We didn't talk about the kids, not much anyway. We talked about books, music, politics, the news. We talked like we did before all the laundry and appointments. Like a couple who still remembered each other underneath the layers of schedules and exhaustion. We had love. We had momentum. We had years behind us and more ahead. Our life was made up of thousands of little decisions that added up to something strong. Something worth keeping. As the kids grew, so did the rhythms of our home. Nora started second grade and took a sudden, intense interest in space. For weeks, every dinner conversation revolved around planets, orbits, and how Pluto should still count. Max, never one to be left behind, decided he wanted to be a firefighter, a superhero, and a chef, all at once. We encouraged them, of course. We had a small bookshelf in the living room that slowly filled with picture books about rocket ships and rescue trucks and chocolate chip cookie recipes. Alina managed it all with her usual grace. She still juggled her growing role at the agency, now supervising multiple teams and handling client presentations in cities she sometimes barely had time to see. She'd come home with stories, about how a pitch went, how a client changed everything at the last minute, how someone on her team finally got their concept approved. She was energized by it, even when she was tired. I could see how much it mattered to her, and I respected it deeply. I held things down when she was away. Packed school lunches, reviewed spelling homework, made sure everyone had clean socks. Max went through a phase where he insisted I draw a dinosaur in his lunchbox every day. My sketches were awful, crude stick-figure T-Rexes with cartoon eyes, but he loved them. I didn't miss a day. On weekends when she was home, Alina made up for lost time. She took the kids to the park, baked muffins with Nora, helped Max build Lego towers taller than the coffee table. Sunday nights became movie nights. We'd spread a blanket on the living room floor, pop popcorn, and let the kids pick something from the queue, usually animated, always familiar. Alina curled into me during those nights, her hand resting on my knee, her head against my shoulder. Sometimes, she fell asleep before the movie ended. We had our systems. Shared calendars. Grocery apps. Side-by-side sinks in the bathroom where we brushed our teeth in sync most mornings. Alina bought matching mugs with our initials and kept hers in the freezer for iced coffee. She always left the cabinet door open when she took something out, and I always closed it behind her without thinking. Our friends used to comment on how in step we seemed. Not performative, just aligned. They said we looked like a couple who had it figured out, like we were living the version of family life people aspired to. I didn't know how to respond to that most of the time. Not because it wasn't true, but because we didn't think of it like that. We weren't trying to look like anything. We were just living the life we'd chosen. Even the hard days, sick kids, sleepless nights, work stress, felt manageable because we faced them together. We were never the couple who yelled. Disagreed, sure. But we always found our way back to center. Every night, we turned off the lights, checked the locks, peeked into the kids' rooms one last time, and climbed into bed. She'd lay with her back to me, and I'd pull the blanket up over her shoulder. That was our life. Predictable. Ordinary. Full. Exactly how we liked it. By the time Max started kindergarten, things felt like they'd clicked into place. We had structure, momentum, and a steady beat to our lives. Nora was 8, curious and talkative, always with a book under her arm or a question in her mouth. Max had grown out of his dinosaur obsession and into building elaborate forts in the living room with every blanket and pillow he could find. The house was often a mess, but a happy one. Alina had hit her stride at work. Her agency landed a major client in early spring, a campaign that would run nationally. She was put in charge of a core team, coordinating strategy, visuals, and messaging. It meant longer hours, sometimes late nights reviewing mock-ups or preparing pitches, but she was thriving. She loved the pressure, the responsibility, the sense that her work was finally being recognized on a larger scale. We made adjustments to keep everything balanced. I shifted my work hours a bit earlier so I could handle pickups and help with homework before dinner. Alina handled mornings, getting the kids dressed, fed, and out the door. On weekends, we alternated. One day for errands and appointments, the next for rest, outings, and family time. We weren't extravagant, but we were doing well. We added a small deck to the backyard. Bought a used SUV that could actually fit both car seats and a stroller without needing a miracle of geometry. I started planning a trip to Colorado for the following summer. Alina had never seen the Rockies, and I wanted the kids to experience someplace other than beaches and suburban parks. She loved the idea. Date nights became less frequent but more intentional. We'd get a sitter and escape for a few hours, usually dinner and a long walk, sometimes a movie if we weren't too exhausted. We never had to force conversation. Even after a decade together, we still had things to say. She'd tell me about the ridiculous client who wanted everything changed 2 days before launch or about her coworker who always played the wrong kind of music in the office. I listened, asked questions, laughed with her. It felt like partnership, not just routine. She still had a softness in her, too. I'd catch her staring at the kids while they played, her eyes going glassy with some thought she wouldn't say out loud. At night, she'd still reach for my hand sometimes while brushing her teeth, just a light touch before bed. We were a family. That word meant something. It was more than just logistics and schedules, it was the sense that we belonged to each other, that we'd chosen this life on purpose. I wasn't naive about how hard marriage could be. I knew it took effort. But I also believed we were in a place where we knew how to navigate those things. Together. If someone had asked me during those months if I was happy, I would have said yes without hesitation. I would have looked around at the life we had built and said, This is exactly where I want to be. Because that's what it felt like. Everything was working. It was sometime in late October when I first noticed a small change in Alina, not a dramatic one, just something faint, like a slightly different tone in a familiar song. She seemed busier than usual, even by her standards. Work had always been demanding, but now there were back-to-back evenings where she didn't get home until after the kids were in bed. She'd text, brief updates like, running late again, sorry, or, don't wait up. I didn't think much of it. The campaign she was leading had reached its final stretch, and the deadlines were stacked. She was tired. That much was obvious. Some nights, she'd walk through the door, barely say a word, just head straight for the shower. Other nights, she'd pour a glass of wine, sit down next to me on the couch, and zone out completely, no scrolling, no conversation, just silence. I chalked it up to burnout. Long hours, office politics, too many moving parts. It wasn't the first time I'd seen her like this, stretched thin and quiet. She had always been someone who carried her stress inward. We were still functioning as a unit. The kids didn't seem to notice anything. Nora was deep into a school project about planets again, and Max had started asking to ride his bike every evening before dinner. I kept things steady at home, like I always had. I didn't want Alina to worry about anything else. I figured the best thing I could do was hold the ground while she handled what was in front of her. She started spending more time alone in the evenings, sometimes in the bedroom with the door closed, saying she needed to decompress or finish some reports. Occasionally, I'd hear the soft sound of her voice on a call or the low hum of music through the wall. I'd knock lightly and offer to bring her tea, but most nights, she'd decline with a tired smile. Weekends shifted too. We used to spend Saturday mornings all together, pancakes, music, maybe a trip to the park. Lately, Alina started sleeping in later. She'd come down with her robe wrapped tight, hair in a bun, mumbling about needing just one slow morning without chaos. I let her have it. Everyone needs their breathing room. I wasn't about to pick a fight over waffles and cartoons. At dinner, she was there but quieter. She still asked the kids about their day, still reminded Nora to chew with her mouth closed, still laughed when Max made up nonsense words. But when they ran off to play, she'd go quiet again. Not cold, just somewhere else. Like her mind was running behind her eyes, always a few steps ahead of wherever she was sitting. One night, I asked if everything was okay. She smiled. Just tired, she said. I'm fine. I believed her. After all, we all go through seasons like that, days when your body shows up but your mind is somewhere else. I told myself she'd bounce back once the campaign wrapped. That we'd take a weekend off. Just us. Reset. Because stress comes and goes. And when you love someone, you trust that the quiet isn't distance. Just a pause. The campaign ended sometime in early November. Alina didn't mention it directly, I only realized it when the long evening stopped and she started coming home at a more predictable hour. But even with the shift in schedule, something in her didn't reset. She still kept to herself more than usual. Still retreated to the bedroom after dinner instead of settling into the couch with me. The kids didn't seem to notice. Max was more interested in building elaborate domino runs that never quite worked, and Nora was on a mission to memorize all the constellations for the science fair. I was the one feeling it, the strange, low-frequency silence that hung in the air between us. She was polite. Pleasant, even. Still kissed me on the cheek when she came home. Still made grocery lists and asked me to check if we were out of detergent. But that natural rhythm we used to move in, that quiet awareness of each other's presence, even in stillness, was harder to find. I'd sit next to her during the kids' bedtime cartoons, and she'd scroll her phone, face lit by a screen I never looked over. She wasn't hiding anything. At least, that's what I told myself. No secretive whispers. No odd messages left open on her laptop. Nothing obvious. And maybe that was why I didn't push. Because when someone you love seems off, you want the explanation to be simple. Seasonal blues. Hormonal dips. A lingering cold. I figured she needed space, and I gave it to her. I offered to take her out again. Just the two of us. A movie, a restaurant, anywhere we could sit and be something other than parents or coworkers or people passing each other in the hallway. She smiled, said it sounded nice, but never followed up. The week passed, then the next, and I stopped asking. There were nights when I went to bed alone and found her already asleep in the guest room. She said she couldn't sleep well in our bed lately, too warm, too restless. I told her it was fine, and it was. At least I thought it was. These things happen after a decade of marriage. People drift in and out of sync. You just wait for the rhythm to return. She started working out more, morning runs before the kids were awake, new leggings arriving in the mail, a playlist I heard faintly through the bathroom door when she took her time getting ready. She looked good. Healthier, maybe. Sharper. Like she'd found some new focus I wasn't part of. We still talked, about the kids, the house, the things that needed to be paid, signed, fixed. We even laughed sometimes, especially when Max came down in a cape and rain boots insisting he was commander of snacks. But there was a layer between us now. Something soft and invisible, but just thick enough to keep me from touching the version of her I remembered best. I didn't accuse. I didn't press. I trusted her. That's what we'd built, years of consistency, shared goals, two kids who loved us both like gravity. I believed this was just a season. People change, sure. But love was supposed to hold shape. December arrived with its usual chaos, school performances, holiday events, a constant churn of decorations and to-do lists. The kids were excited, of course. Max had to wear a tiny paper crown for his kindergarten play and insisted on practicing his one line every night. Nora was more serious about it all, making handmade gifts and carefully curating a playlist for our car rides. Alina moved through it all with efficiency. She bought the teacher gifts, handled the RSVPs, even organized the neighborhood cookie exchange like she did every year. On the surface, everything was intact. But inside our home, there was a quiet current of disconnection I couldn't shake. She started taking long showers. Unusually long. I'd hear the water running for half an hour, sometimes more. It wasn't every night, but often enough to notice. When she came out, she'd usually go straight to the guest room with a towel still wrapped around her hair, saying she wanted to read or wind down alone. I didn't fight it. I didn't ask for explanations. Maybe I should have, but there was a line I didn't know how to cross. One part of me thought she deserved the space. The other part thought maybe I was afraid of the answer. We barely touched each other anymore. Not in a dramatic or obvious way, it wasn't rejection, just absence. A missing part of the routine. I'd reach out sometimes, brush her back as I passed her in the hallway, but she rarely responded. Not cold, just distant. As if she was always walking around thinking about something else. Somewhere else. One night, as I was closing the dishwasher, she came into the kitchen and stared at the open fridge. Just stood there. I waited, thinking she was looking for something, but she never reached in. Eventually, she shut the door and walked back out without saying a word. It was such a small moment, but I remember it clearly because it felt like watching someone float just out of reach. Like she was in the same room but suspended behind glass. Her phone was always with her now, but again, nothing overt. She didn't hide it. It wasn't upside down on the counter or carried into the bathroom like a secret. But she checked it more often, smiled down at it in ways she didn't when we were talking. I tried not to notice. Evenings changed. I found myself spending more time alone with the kids. Helping with homework, brushing their teeth, tucking them in. She'd wander in after the bedtime stories, kiss them quickly, and vanish again. I'd find her later in bed with her laptop open or watching something on her tablet with earbuds in. I wanted to believe it was just exhaustion. That she was burned out and needed to recharge in her own way. People go through phases. Even the strongest couples go through cold spells. But it had been weeks. And even though nothing was said, nothing confessed, I felt it like a shadow at the edge of every quiet moment. She was slipping away. I just didn't know where she was going. It was a Thursday when it happened. I'd left work early, one of those rare slow days where everything was caught up, and I figured I'd beat traffic, grab dinner for the kids, maybe even surprise Alina with her favorite soup from the cafe near her office. I wasn't planning anything grand. Just something small to reset the mood at home. I pulled into the driveway around 5:10. The house looked quiet. No lights in the front room, no music or TV. The kids were at my sister's for the night, a sleepover they'd been counting down to all week, so I knew Alina was probably alone. I walked up the steps with the takeout bag in one hand and my keys in the other, thinking maybe we could eat together, just the two of us. When I opened the front door, I heard voices. A man's voice, deep and relaxed. Then laughter. Hers. I paused just inside the entryway, frozen for a second that felt like an hour. Before I could call out, before I could take a step farther, someone came around the corner from the hallway. He was tall. Athletic. Dressed casually, sweatpants, a t-shirt. Barefoot. He looked at me like I'd walked into the wrong apartment. His face wrinkled with disgust before he even opened his mouth. "Who the hell are you?" he asked, stepping forward. I stared at him. "This is my house." He scoffed, like I'd just told a bad joke. "You're kidding, right?" "No," I said. "I live here." He shook his head and took another step toward me. "Nah, man. You must be confused. This place belongs to Alina." My stomach twisted. "I'm her husband." His expression didn't shift. Not into regret. Not into confusion. Just annoyance. "She didn't mention you." I stepped forward, but he didn't move. "Get out of my house." He looked me up and down with a smirk. "You her ex or something?" "Look, bro, I don't know what arrangement you had, but she's with me now. Maybe you should just leave before this gets messy. You don't look like you belong here anyway." That did it. I dropped the takeout bag and shoved past him, my heart pounding in my ears. He tried to stop me, placing a hand on my chest, but I knocked it away. I walked straight down the hall, through the living room, into what used to be the space where our family spent evenings together. And there she was. Alina. Standing in the middle of the room in a thin robe, her hair damp like she'd just showered, a glass of wine in her hand. Her face dropped the moment she saw me. I didn't yell. I didn't ask questions. I stood there, staring at her, and in that moment I knew everything. The late nights. The silence. The distance. The careful, subtle way she'd been peeling herself out of our life one thread at a time. She didn't say a word. And I didn't wait for an explanation. I didn't look at her for long. I didn't have to. One glance told me everything I had refused to believe for months. Her robe, barely tied. The wine. The man behind me who still thought he had the right to stand in my doorway. I turned back into the hall. He was still there, arms crossed like he was daring me to speak. I didn't. I walked past him, straight to the front door, and flung it open. "Out," I said, voice low and shaking, but not with fear. With fury. He raised an eyebrow. "You serious?" "I'm not asking. I'm telling you. You have 5 seconds before I make this your problem." He glanced down the hallway toward Alina, like he was waiting for her to say something. She didn't. She just stood there, frozen. He hesitated. That was all I needed. I stepped toward him, fast. My hand gripped the doorframe as I shoved it wider open, the slam of it against the wall echoing like a gunshot. I said out. That time, he listened. He grabbed his shoes off the floor, like that was going to make it better, and muttered something under his breath. He passed me slowly, chest puffed like he still thought he had some dignity left. He didn't look at me again. He didn't dare. When the door shut behind him, I stood in the silence for a long time. The hallway smelled like her perfume. I turned slowly and walked back into the living room. Alina hadn't moved. She looked small. Not vulnerable, just caught. Like a child who'd been found with stolen candy and had no idea what to do next. "What the hell was that?" I asked. My voice was sharp now. Controlled, but hot under the skin. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. I didn't wait. "You bring him into this house. You let him talk to me like I'm some stranger on the sidewalk. You let him put his hands on me, in my house. I didn't think you'd be home." I laughed. Loud. Bitter. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I interrupt something? Should I have texted before I came into my own home so you could finish your little scene in peace? She closed her robe tighter. Don't bother, I snapped. There's nothing left to cover up. She took a step forward. Can we talk? No, I said. We're done talking. I pointed to the door. Out. You and him. You want each other. Go. But you're not staying here. You don't live here anymore. Not after this. Can I just get my things? No. I stepped forward again. You don't get your things. You don't get your robe. You don't get your wine. You don't get another second of my kindness. She stared at me, wide-eyed, like she didn't understand who she was looking at. You made your choice, I said. Now get the hell out. And she did. She left barefoot, humiliated, still clutching the robe she'd met him in. I locked the door behind her. Then I stood there, in the center of the house we built, breathing like I'd run a marathon. Because sometimes anger isn't noise. It's the sound of something breaking for the last time. The night after I kicked her out, the house felt foreign. Too quiet. Not peaceful, not yet, but emptied. Like something heavy had been lifted, only to reveal bruises underneath. The living room still had her book on the side table. Her slippers were tucked under the couch. A half-finished mug of tea was still on the counter from that morning. I didn't touch any of it. I just stared at it for a while, letting it sink in that she had lived here right up until the moment she destroyed everything. She called once that night. I didn't answer. She texted the next morning. Please let me talk to you. Then again, I need to come get my things. I didn't reply. She showed up that afternoon. I saw her from the window, standing in her work clothes, sunglasses on, arms folded across her chest like she was prepared for a debate. I didn't open the door. I didn't move. I let her knock, then knock harder, then shout my name through the door like we were still playing house. After 10 minutes, she gave up. 2 days later, her mother called me. Alina must have tried to turn the story around, make herself the victim somehow. But I told her mom the truth, plainly, clearly, and without rage. Just the facts. Her mother went quiet. Then she said, "I'm so sorry, honey," and hung up. I haven't heard from her since. Word spread faster than I thought it would. Her brother called me next. He didn't even ask for details, just told me I did the right thing and that he was ashamed of her. Then he said something I didn't expect: she always acts like she's owed something. I hadn't seen it before. Not clearly. But he was right. She came back again a few days later. This time she didn't knock. She just stood on the porch and stared at the front door like she was waiting for it to open on its own. I watched her through the peephole, arms stiff, eyes darting back and forth like she wasn't sure whether to feel guilty or justified. I didn't move. I let her stand there. Let her feel the weight of being outside. She left after 5 minutes. The kids asked where she was. I told them she was staying somewhere else for a little while and that I'd explain more when I knew what to say. Nora asked if she was coming back. I said, "Not right now." That seemed to be enough. I changed the locks. Cancelled her credit cards. Called the lawyer. I was done protecting her comfort. She had turned our home into a stage for someone else's fantasy, and now she was seeing the curtain fall. She sent a longer message that night. No apology. Just more deflection. We both know things haven't been perfect. Maybe this is what we needed to wake up. Can't we be adults about this? I didn't even finish reading it. Because once you've burned your house down with both hands, you don't get to ask for the warmth back. It's strange how quickly a home adapts when someone leaves it. At first, it was the obvious things: her toothbrush gone from the sink, her coat missing from the hook near the door. Then it was the quieter changes. The scent that used to linger in the bedroom after she got ready in the morning faded. Her voice, her footfall, the specific way she closed cabinet doors, all of it disappeared like dust shaken loose from a rug. I didn't grieve. I rearranged. I boxed up her things, what little she hadn't tried to come back for, and stored them in the garage. No contact, no warning. If she wanted them, she could call my lawyer. I donated the wine glasses she loved, replaced the throw pillows she bought during some long-forgotten home decor phase, threw out the robe she wore that day. It felt petty at first, but then it felt necessary. This house had been ours. Now it was mine. And it was going to look like it. The kids adjusted faster than I expected. Nora stopped asking questions after the first week. Max seemed less affected, though every now and then he'd ask if Mommy was coming to movie night. I'd tell him it was just us tonight. He'd nod and go back to his popcorn like nothing had changed. We were okay. We were more than okay. I started sleeping again, really sleeping. Long, uninterrupted stretches where I didn't wake up to silence and wonder what she was thinking behind it. I had my bed back. My time. My sanity. I no longer walked on eggshells or felt like a ghost haunting my own living room. People asked if I planned to forgive her. If I'd ever let her back in. I told them the truth, forgiveness might come someday, but not the kind that opens doors. Just the kind that lets you stop carrying someone else's shame. She lost everything. Not because I took it. Because she gave it away. The man she brought into my house never showed his face again. I heard, through someone at her old agency, that they weren't seeing each other anymore. Apparently, she left the job too. No explanation. Just stopped showing up one day and sent a formal resignation by email. Whatever she hoped for, whatever version of life she thought she could leap into, it didn't work out. She tried messaging me again a few weeks later. I blocked her. She tried showing up one more time after that. I didn't answer the door. She stood there longer than before, maybe 10, 15 minutes. Then she walked away, slowly. I watched through the blinds and didn't feel anger anymore. I felt nothing. That was the peace. Not forgetting, not pretending it never happened, but knowing I survived it. Knowing that when someone tried to replace loyalty with lies, I didn't just break, I rebuilt. From the ground up. With my kids, with my house, with my dignity fully intact. And this time, no one gets to rewrite the story but me.